Welcome to the Wellness Lab Digest, where we help you to absorb powerful, life-changing insights from top wellness experts with our daily bite-sized wellness podcast summaries. Each episode is packed with distilled, powerful takeaways to boost your health and well-being. To support this podcast, please scroll down on whatever app you're listening. Ratings and reviews are helpful. Even better, just send the show to a friend. Check out our sponsors at the bottom of the page, or simply click the Support the Show link below the episode description.
Happiness as the key to a fulfilling life. Well, not quite. Today we're discussing how pursuing happiness may actually be holding us back from true contentment and ethical living.
Oh, that's an intriguing perspective. What led you to that conclusion?
Well, it stems from our recent conversation with TV writer and philosopher Mike Schur. He spent years studying moral philosophy and ethics, and he's come to some fascinating conclusions about the pursuit of happiness. We often think of happiness as this ultimate goal, but Schur suggests that constantly chasing happiness might actually be counterproductive.
That's really interesting. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Sure thing. So, Schur argues that when we're solely focused on our own happiness, we might overlook the broader ethical implications of our actions. He points out that true contentment often comes from living an ethical life and considering the well-being of others, not just ourselves. It's like, how sometimes doing the right thing doesn't always feel good in the moment, but it leads to a deeper sense of satisfaction?
Oh, I see what you mean. It's like that old saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. We might think we're pursuing happiness, but if we're not considering the ethical implications, we could end up causing harm.
Exactly. And Schur has explored this idea in his TV shows, especially The Good Place. He takes these big, complex philosophical ideas and presents them in a way that's accessible and entertaining. It's pretty remarkable when you think about it, using a sitcom to explore moral philosophy.
That's so true. I remember one episode where they explored the trolley problem. That classic ethical dilemma about whether you divert a runaway trolley to kill one person instead of 5. But they did it in this hilariously over-the-top way that involved actually putting the characters in that situation over and over again.
Oh man, that episode was hilarious. But it also really made you think, right? And that's what Schur is so good at. He takes these heavy topics and makes them digestible and even fun. It's like he's giving us a spoonful of sugar to help the moral philosophy go down.
Well, speaking of making things more digestible, didn't Schur share some practical tips for incorporating ethical thinking into our daily lives?
He did, yeah. One thing he emphasized is the importance of constantly questioning and examining our beliefs and actions. It's not about having all the answers, but about developing what he calls an ethical muscle memory. So when we're faced with a moral dilemma, we're better equipped to handle it.
That makes a lot of sense. Did he give any specific examples of how to do that?
Well, one practical tip he shared was about creating boundaries between our digital and personal lives. He keeps his phone out of the bedroom, for instance, to help his brain wind down at the end of the day. It's a small thing, but it's about being intentional with our choices and considering their impact.
Oh, I like that idea. It's like creating a little sanctuary from the constant demands of the outside world. All this talk about ethics and intentional living reminds me of something else from our conversation. Didn't we discuss a happiness hack from one of our listeners?
Yes. Good memory. This came from a listener named Rachel, and it's about birthday treats. She noticed that a lot of stores and businesses offer birthday freebies or discounts. But since they all come at once on your actual birthday, it can be hard to use them all. So she started giving different birthdays to different places, spreading out those little treats throughout the year.
That's pretty clever. But I wonder, does that raise any ethical concerns? Is it okay to bend the truth a little for something like that?
That's a great question. It's exactly the kind of ethical dilemma Schur might explore in his work. On one hand, you could argue that it's harmless. The businesses aren't really losing anything, and it's bringing joy to Rachel. On the other hand, it does involve being dishonest. What do you think?
Well, I can see both sides. It's not causing any real harm, but it does involve deception. Maybe it comes down to intention. If the goal is just to spread a little joy throughout the year, that seems pretty benign. But if someone were doing it to take advantage of businesses or get more than their fair share, that might be crossing a line.
That's a good point. It's like what Schur was saying about developing that ethical muscle memory. We have to consider the implications of our actions, even for something as seemingly small as this. It's not always about right or wrong, but about being thoughtful and intentional.
Exactly. And I think that ties back to what we were saying earlier about happiness. Maybe instead of focusing on maximizing our own happiness through things like birthday freebies, we should be thinking about how our actions impact others and contribute to the greater good.
Well said. You know, this whole conversation reminds me of something Schur mentioned about his work in Hollywood. He talked about how the industry is often seen as a hotbed of bad behavior, but he argues that it's not unique in that regard. Any industry where there's money and power at stake is going to have its share of moral quandaries.
Oh, that's an interesting perspective. Did he talk about how he navigates that environment?
Yeah, he did. He seemed pretty optimistic about recent changes in the industry, saying it's becoming more welcoming and tolerant. But he also emphasized the importance of individual responsibility, of constantly examining our own actions and striving to do better. It's not about being perfect, but about always trying to improve.
That's really inspiring. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by big systemic issues, but focusing on our own actions and choices is something we can all do.
Absolutely. And I think that's really the key takeaway from our conversation with Schur, whether we're talking about TV shows, personal habits, or how we interact with the world around us. It all comes back to trying to be better and do better. It's not about achieving some perfect state of happiness, but about living ethically and contributing positively to the world around us.
Well said. And I think that's a great note to end on. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Just that I hope our listeners take away the idea that ethics and happiness aren't separate pursuits. By living more ethically and considering the impact of our actions, we might find a deeper, more lasting sense of contentment than we would by chasing happiness directly. So, why not start today? Maybe keep your phone out of the bedroom tonight or write down your to-do list by hand. Sometimes it's these small changes that can make a big difference in how we approach life.
I love that. Well, that's all we have time for today. Remember, the best time to start living more ethically was 20 years ago, but the second best time is now. Until next time, keep questioning, keep improving, and keep striving to make the world a little bit better.
Thank you for listening to the Wellness Lab Digest. If you have received value from the podcast, I have 3 asks of you. 1, share the show with your friends and send them a link to the show. 2, please leave a rating and review in whatever app you're listening. And last but not least, please let me know what topics you would like us to cover in the future. You can contact me by sending me a message using the Send Us a Text link below the episode description.